Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the latest edition of the Radcast, the Radical Marketing Podcast. Excited. Today is the second of many guests we're having over the next 4 to 8 weeks in the esports industry. It's been a fascinating discovery of really just the breadth, scope, and size of the industry. And really excited to have today's guest, Charles Conroy, the Vice President of Gaming at The Switch. Charles, really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, sweet. So let's dig right in, Charles. So VP of Gaming at The Switch, a lot of past experience in the esports realms, I know, with teams and events and all of that. But maybe let's just start right down the line of, give everybody that condensed version. Maybe I say that because we keep these to 30 to 40 minutes. I know anyone's life story or business life story could be longer, but would love to just dig first in kind of your background in esports and just kind of the general career path for you.
Absolutely. So I'll make it as condensed as possible. 16 years of my life, but
yeah.
In 1999 as a player playing Counter-Strike, found this game online with some buddies. And we found out that there were live events to participate for cash in this thing. So put a little team together, my friends. We drove down to Dallas, Texas, and we played in our first international tournament. And this was about 2001 at this point. And when we were there, we realized people flew from all around the world to compete for what was, I think, 50 grand at the time, which was a huge deal. We absolutely annihilated. We didn't do well at all. No idea how good these guys were. But I saw a business there. So I ended up taking my team, going out and getting some corporate sponsorship from some endemic brands and putting together a really solid roster of some of the best guys in the country. We eventually became the #1 team in North America, went around the world representing the U.S. We played in the Esports World Cup in France. We were on a TV show in Korea for 2 months where we actually lived in like a player village and saw how massive this thing was getting. And at that point, I was putting my full force behind it. I was quite young at the time. I started the company when I was 16.
Wow.
So when I was 18 is when I was doing all the traveling. I was also a freshman at SMU in Dallas. So I was trying to balance college and running this company. And then DirecTV came out with a TV show, which would be the first example of franchise leagues in North America. So they had 8 teams fully funded by DirecTV in 4 different games. They had a big draft at the Playboy Mansion, which I went to when I was 19. That's certainly a highlight of my life. And they
every 19-year-old's dream. Literally.
Yeah. I was like, it's crazy. And they're like, what are you here for? I'm like, oh, I'm part of the video game team. This is before it was cool.
Do you have your fake ID?
And,
I didn't need it.
I didn't need it. You're already in,
Yeah, all right.
So that was pretty crazy, right? This new league had come out. Each team was given like a $600,000 a year budget. They paid for apartments for everyone in LA, plus your per diem and your car. And these guys went from making $500 a month as players to $30,000 a year for an 8-week season. So we're living in LA for 8 weeks, filming this TV show. My team didn't do so well season 1. We killed it season 2, came back, and we're the strongest competitors in the league. But it's just a real experience. So this was on TV around the world. They then expanded internationally. They built the league a little too fast, too soon, and burned through about $45 million in 2 years.
Wow.
Not have a season 3. Yeah, it was really over the top. They took esports from, all right, we're going to pay you guys $500 a month, and it's a very niche thing, to let's go as hard as we can. Let's get NFL producers. Let's get NASCAR guys involved. And it was awesome. It was just a little too early. This was 2008. So that shut down really abruptly. And it was sort of a dark time for US esports because people felt that News Corp and DirecTV couldn't do it with $45 million in 2 years. Maybe this thing wasn't going to happen. It was going to go the way of professional bowling where people will watch it, but it's about as big as it's going to get. And so it was an amazing thing to be a part of, but as fast as it rose, it crashed that quickly as well. So at that point, a few of us regrouped. A very close friend of mine, Jason Lake, who is sort of an iconic figure in esports now and had ran Complexity Gaming prior to this TV show. I was like, let's rebuild Complexity. I, at the time, was 21, finishing up at SMU, and I, wanted to do this full time, remain doing this full time. We didn't have any cash. We had a great brand, and we had a bunch of stars that were available to us that had just spent the last 2 years on international television. So we had talent, we had a brand, but we had no funding whatsoever. So I went to CES with a pitch deck. Jason and I and another guy named Jason Bass, who ran a website called golfrag.com, which was like the ESPN.com of esports. We got together and we started this team. I literally walked CES with a pitch book, like a pitch book, going up to every booth I thought would be even interested in gaming. Creative Labs took a gamble on us right there at CES and committed to being our title sponsor for the team for the year. They gave us enough money to launch the organization, relaunch it, I should say. And we were off to the races. Once we were back as really the only North American independent esports brand that had survived this massive shift in North America, we had a ton of support, both from fans and companies that wanted to hop in. So we built the thing back up pretty quickly. Ended up having a product line in Best Buy of Complexity products, which is the coolest thing at the time I'd ever worked on.
Huh.
All of our partners would work with us to have our players test products and optimize them for gaming. And then, kind of tell the story of the team and the design process on the back of the box. And we got a rev share in all those products. So that's when we turned Complexity into a real business. We're all doing it full time. And then, after a lot of success in the space, Twitch came out, and the viewership numbers for esports really became apparent to brands out there. And a ton of money, once Twitch came out, a ton of outside money from sports teams started coming into esports. And it happened fast, man. We're talking 9 months. All these teams went from ideas to $15-20 million in funding. So we're seeing everyone around us get funded, and we've been sort of just concentrating on the fundamentals and not fundraising.
Yeah.
And we needed to shift at that point, because we were operating on like a $3 million a year budget versus teams that had a $12 million a year budget. And they were getting cash after being around for 2 months. We've been around since 2003. This was 2015. And so we really needed to shift our focus and go after some of that. And once we did, we had a ton of offers for cash, because, Complexity being the oldest brand in North America appealed to a lot of brands. We ended up selling the company to the Dallas Cowboys, which was an insane process. There's a lot of parts of that process that are just, it's insane, right? I mean, this is something we started. I was in a college dorm room, literally. Jason started it in his house, and then, was nice enough to bring me in after the championship gaming series, but to now be sitting across from the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
It was crazy. Their vision for the team overall won out, because they fully integrated the team in the Cowboys system. So there's Eat with the Cowboys for breakfast and lunch. They have the same mental health facilities that they have access to, all the physical training that goes into it. They built them a gorgeous facility, the GameStop Performance Center out there in Frisco, at the Star. So once the Cowboys purchased the team, I was out, and my partner Jason Bass was out, and then Lake, who founded it, stayed on as the CEO, and he's done a fantastic job with that brand. Still a very good friend of mine today, and they're Complexity is absolutely killing it. They have arguably the best Counter-Strike team in the world right now, and they won the Madden championship last year, and so they're doing great things for the Cowboys there.
Yeah.
Which brings us to today. Hopefully this wasn't too long.
No, it's perfect.
And I left gaming for about a year, because I'd been in it since I was 16. I was now 30 at the time. And I just needed a little break. Ended up opening a restaurant in New York, doing something completely different. Had a blast, but really missed, the industry I frankly was one of the forefathers of. So I had a few offers to come back, and a buddy of mine at the Switch talked to me about what they do. And what the Switch does is we're the world's largest transmission broadcaster. So we take live events and we put them on TV, including the Super Bowl, the Oscars, the Emmys, even the Royal Wedding. And beyond that, we produce events. So we have mobile production in the cloud. We have remote production in actual physical facilities in Burbank. And in a COVID America, obviously, well, COVID world, really, not producing on site has become very popular. So we've been doing a ton of remote production for the PGA, for Conference USA in the traditional world. And we're the world leader in esports now, in infrastructure and transmission. So almost every live esports event is using us in some way. So it's been really exciting. I've been there for a year building out for a year and a half now, building up their esports vertical. The response has been phenomenal, and I'm glad we can bring what traditional sports has from a quality level to esports.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot to unpack there.
Yes.
You kind of touched so many levels of it. I want to start, like, I could start a lot of places, but I want to start with the complexity part. You know, you obviously had the experience early on as a gamer and all of that, which is interesting. But unpack a little bit for someone, because I think it was hard for me. I get it now, you know, having been, you know, somewhat of a gamer when I was younger, and, you know, following it peripherally, being in an agency world where we had some sponsorship deals when I worked on some Verizon stuff. So I got it and get it at a holistic level. But for someone kind of listening to understand exactly what was complexity, like, I know you said, well, we put teams together, we won tournaments, but as a brand, as an entity, what was and is complexity? What is the business model for someone kind of hearing of what complexity is? Because I think sometimes those things kind of get thrown out there, but I think people are like, I don't understand. How do people make money in gaming, and what exactly is this?
Yeah, I got you, man. So complexity is a gaming organization. We call it a team. And underneath that banner of complexity gaming, there's players that play various titles. So you might have 5, 6, 7, 8 games under one brand. So complexity is the overall entity. And it'd be like an entity owning a Major League Baseball team, an NBA team, an MLS team, and then putting it all under one brand. So let's say the Giants, right, weren't just football. The Giants also had Giants baseball. The Giants also had Giants soccer. And that's how gaming works for the most part. There's very few brands that are competing in one title because gaming is fluid. The most popular game is changing. So while the NBA is the established, you know, I'll call it ball and hoop game, game that you play. If you have a ball and you have a hoop, it's basketball. Well, there's 10 different types of shooting games, or 10 different types of MOBAs, which are the games you see with the up top view and the little guys running around.
Yep.
And so there's multiple ball and hoop games in one category. So you might have multiple teams in the same type of game, or a shooter like Fortnite, right? That's a shooter, but so is Counter-Strike. Totally different games, totally different fan bases. So you'll have different teams all under one brand. And so that's what complexity is. And that's what we built.
And how does complexity make money?
So there's a lot of different ways to make money for an esports team. The most traditional way is just corporate sponsorships, right? That's back in the day. That's how we did it. You got a sponsor that paid you.
So Mountain Dew comes along and sponsors complexity. I'm not saying that's definitely who you had to sponsor, but as an example, Mountain Dew knows that this is an affluent group that of people that are into this, and no different than sponsoring the NBA or a facility or anything else. Mountain Dew comes along and goes, we're going to sponsor you for X dollars and X placements, brand placements, not just logo placements, but activations, if you will.
Totally.
And so that's the primary monetization trigger.
Yeah, and you do a lot of cool brand activations. So these eyeballs are the hardest eyeballs to reach, and they're also the most desirable. It's young people. Everyone thinks it's all young males. It's actually a lot of females that watch gaming. You're looking at 14 to 45, higher disposable income than an NBA fan, higher disposable income than actually most sports fans. And they don't watch TV. They don't, read traditional like papers. So how do you get these guys? You get them where their eyeballs are. Their eyeballs are on Twitch. Their eyeballs are on cool integrations with their favorite team that they see on Twitter. Different product drops. You have to get to them organically, and you have to be smarter about how you get to these guys. But once you do get to the gaming community, they've shown they're very willing to support brands that come in and support the space. BMW, I think, has done an incredible job this past year doing a huge rollout with 5 teams, and they painted some of the cars in the team colors, and they had the guys doing driving tricks and talking about why they like BMW. And some people are like, wow, BMW is a luxury brand. Why would they do that? Well, a lot of gamers can afford. I mean, what's the starting BMW, like 40 grand, 50 grand? Like,
yep.
That's not out of the reach for this market. That's actually very much in line with these guys that, are 22, 23, actually probably work in a tech space or, make more cash than, your average citizen. And, they have a little bit more money to spend and they're willing to spend it. They're willing to put it into premium products if you target them the right way.
Is the words IT in the title for 80% of this demographic?
No, I mean, a lot of people would think that, right? But
yeah.
Esports fans are just like any other sports fan. Like they enjoy what they like to enjoy. They do, everything under the sun. And I think there's a very common misconception.
Yep.
They all live in their mom's basement and are 300
pounds.
That's
why I teed that up, because I think that's what people think, and it's so far from the truth. It's like
totally. And it's just like an NFL fan, right? You come in all shapes and sizes. This demographic has largely not been like that. If you look at these pro players, a lot of them look like you or I, some a little bit more like you. Let's go to the gym. You chip a little bit more than I do. But,
hey, I got to make up for all my other deficiencies somehow.
But yeah, man, it's all across the board. But from a financial perspective, this demographic does have, more income than your average sports fan, and they've shown that they've been willing to spend. So
back to the complex example. So sponsorship. So it's less about putting teams together. Now, obviously, if winning, the fun is in the winning. Putting the teams together, you want them to win. But is that less important than the influence of the – does the team gaming influence, though? Is it kind of a chicken or the egg thing? Like, you need to put together teams that win to get the influence. You get the influence when you have teams that win?
Yeah, so interesting point. So there's also a ton of other ways teams make money. I'll run through those really quickly.
Yeah.
Rights deals. So teams are getting cut in on media rights for these tournaments. And when 3 or 4 million people are concurrently watching, that can be real money. And I think the future of esports income for these teams are in media rights deals, much like the NFL. So media rights are becoming a huge topic. Product drops. So a lot of these brands now have interesting clothing lines. Fnatic just did a deal with Gucci to do a limited edition watch. And stuff like that sells because if it's limited and again, 100 Thieves, Face Clan, they do product drops. They shut down parts of New York, literally streets, because hundreds and thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands, thousands of people have come out. And their fan base is rabid for new stuff. So there's a lot of ways to make money outside of just winning. And I'll use Face Clan as an example. They really are a brand now. They have a movie studio. They have one of the top channels on YouTube gaming. They have a content house. They make their money off producing really interesting content, and winning is very much secondary to them.
What team was that again?
Face Clan, they're called.
Okay.
So they have I think probably, I could look right now, but 8 million Instagram fans. So they really engage through media and content creation and creating this lifestyle brand that's really cool and relatable in the space. And then winning is part of that. Obviously, they want to win. They compete in esports. But if they lose, they're not going to lose money.
Yeah.
Or other teams rely on the winning to get the views, to get the sponsorships.
Got it. You build the brand big enough and interesting enough, it supersedes the winning. I mean, it's no different than other businesses in a lot of ways. There's a lot of teams I could name right now that are not winning that are huge brands. Hey, I'm a Knicks fan, and it's tough, man. It is tough. But if you want to go to the Garden, it's still $250 for a ticket, and you're like, man, they're the worst team in the league. It's then the brand's huge, regardless of they haven't won in 20 something years, right?
Yeah, it's tough.
But I know I tried to, I became quasi New York fan living there, and for all the teams, and it was not the best of time periods for baseball was good, but
Yankees will always be interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Is the media rights, that's fascinating. Twitch kind of set this fuse of fire, I guess, in many ways, correct? With I know you got Facebook, the now defunct Facebook gaming, I guess, or soon to be called something else, if I'm saying that right. Are they
so Mixer rolled into
Mixer? Is that what's
shut
down and becoming Facebook gaming, right?
They rolled it under Facebook's umbrella. Facebook's a huge play in the space. YouTube just made it a huge play. So as an example, the Overwatch and Call of Duty leagues, which are Blizzard's run leagues. So they're the traditional franchise system. They travel around the world having these tournaments. People buy markets. They own that market, and they own, all the resources within that market, and they can solicit deals, etc. But their media rights deal with Twitch was reportedly worth $45 million a year for the right to broadcast that league. Now, the people that pay a spot in this league is anywhere between $20 to $40 million, depending on which franchise spot you get, if it's an expansion, etc. So they, as part of that, get a piece of that deal, right? Twitch did not renew that deal, and the league went out to get a reported $160 million for a 2-year deal, 2 or 3 year deal, depending on who you talk to, with YouTube. So
wow.
And it got the media rights to that league.
Which league?
The Overwatch League.
Yeah.
These are much like you're seeing, like the WWE moving over to Fox, right?
Yeah.
So just like that, when NBC lost the NFL back in the 90s and it went over to Fox, that was a huge deal. So that is happening in gaming now. You're seeing serious money being put towards broadcast rights.
Yeah. It's crazy. And I did wonder the first time I watched Twitch, I was like, these guys getting royalties on any of this? I mean, you're being in the business, we're eyeballs in media traditionally. That was kind of like my head first went there when it came out. Now sounds like that's becoming the hot topic.
Yeah, and I mean, streamers are making $15-20 million if they're big. Everyone uses the example of Ninja because, every parent has heard of Ninja. I have a funny story. When I was in Vegas and Ninja was there and Champ Bailey was there, and I'd say the people going up to Ninja for an autograph were 15 times out of Champ Bailey, and it was all parents being like, we were there for the McGregor fight, and he was there as well. And every parent was coming up, I need this for my kid. Like, he's a rock star. He's on the cover of ESPN magazine. But his exclusive deal to stream was $30 million a year just to stream on the Mixer platform, which he got paid out on after they folded. But he's also got his own Red Bull can. He's one of the faces of Samsung. He's getting paid $500,000 an appearance. So for him to show up at an event and put it on his Instagram and tweet about it, that's $500,000. So the streamers are making serious money at the top level. Everyone uses him as an example. It's obviously the extreme top.
Yeah.
A player on salary is going to make in a game like Counter-Strike, he's going to make $20,000 a month. So that's $240, $250 plus prize money. So your players are making $500,000 a year. And then endorsements are coming in. So this is a lucrative opportunity for guys that want to go pro. I mean, I had some buddies actually in the NHL that are making less than my esports buddies.
So in other words, I had the same discussion on a previous guest. I should keep encouraging my kids to play then. Sounds like the opportunity is there, I
get that question a lot. Probably every Delta flight I'm on, when I sit next to them, when we start talking, they're like, so my kids should do this.
It's such a balance, it's like, I don't mind it. I'm not gaming, whatever. They play, they're still kind of in the Fortnite. I mean, they're not really quite at the age where I want them, like, blood and guts blowing people's heads off. Like,
yeah,
I
get that.
But, my 10-year-old seems to be in the higher echelon for his age group for Fortnite. So I don't know.
And they're coming out with a ton of leagues, like sort of a boys and girls club model, or younger gamers to game in a safe space. And there's multiple startups doing that right now. And it's really interesting because parents want to encourage it, but they also, you don't want your kid online talking to some creep.
Yeah. You got F-bombs flying and I don't coddle my kids. I mean, daddy's not always has the perfect mouth, but at the same time, there's been some bad players in the gaming space, I think, as far as just from language to, like you said, some things out there. No different than any other thing or entity, right? There's always the good and the bad.
So there's a ton of startups trying to cater to that need. and making like a safer space for that age group, much like a Boys and Girls Club of America. I will say, to your point, as far as people coming into the space, and I think very relevant to your audience here, the biggest thing I can state, if you're going to enter the esports space, is you have to come in organically. They can smell BS a mile away. People have thrown money at it and failed, much like the TV show I was on, right? They spent a bunch of money, they did it wrong, and they tried to fit a game into a linear time spot, which is not easy to do because sometimes they run long, much like a baseball game, there's extra innings, etc. But there's so many ways to come into gaming in a great way and to capitalize on an audience that has cash and is willing to spend it and is energized and excited and will help your brand out in the digital space, retweeting you, following your Facebook page, et cetera, and help your online metrics blow up. But you have to approach it in an organic way. And if you don't, you'll burn out really quickly.
Yeah. And to that point, we've been talking big, we talked about Ninja, the biggest gamer in the space. We talked about big brands. I'd love to know your perspective for small to medium business, because it's such again, as a previous guest we said it's unattainable for a small to medium business to have an NBA, sponsorship, or in a MLB or something like that. But esports is still, it's certainly not nascent, but it's still early enough that there's ways. So I'd love to know, how do you bite off organic, real, but small chunks for small to medium businesses? Are those opportunities out there? Because I think a lot of brands in that medium size, small is a whole other game, but even medium size, they don't even know where to start,
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a ton of ways for small and medium businesses to get involved. One way would be partnering with an individual streamer. So maybe not an entire team, but partnering with someone that you think can evangelize your brand, or a couple streamers, and then activating them in really cool ways. If a brand's creative and they're smart and they have a small budget, it's fine, because the digital world is a very huge world. You can create really cool campaigns from people's houses now. And in a COVID world, you kind of have to. And gamers are smart. They appreciate like funny or witty or cool campaigns that are out of the box. So if you utilize one piece of talent really well, or two pieces of talent really well, you don't need to spend the money on a whole team. With that said, there's a lot of teams out there that are starting out that have good players behind them or interesting personalities. That would be like a mid-tier team. Consider them like semi-professional. And if you activate that talent in the right way, you can get a ton of ROI and a ton of bang for that buck. Yeah,
I love it. Let's switch a little bit, literally, to the Switch.
Yeah.
Talk about that platform. I'm going to name drop a little bit. One of my good friends who actually lives here in Greenville, but out of New York, is Scott Cole, who's the voice of NBA 2K. One of the voices. And so Scott and I did a radio show back about 5 years ago. We're both Clemson fans and did an old radio show, but good friend, great guy. And, last night I was watching the NBA 2K tournament on ESPN2. So it just goes again, showing the growth of this, watching virtual basketball. Right. But I'd love to know, is in understanding what the Switch's role in watching something like that broadcast, like ESPN2, is there's got to be a transmission going on. You've got teams playing a million different places. I'd love to understand the role of the Switch as it relates to esports and transmission and these types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So ESPN is actually one of our biggest clients. Love those guys. So hi to them if they're watching. So we operate in sort of a 3 or 4-fold capacity. If there's a live event, the first thing we're going to try to do is bring in connectivity. So we'll bring in, 2 private 1 gig lines of internet. This will never touch the public internet. So it's on our fiber network. It's fully protected. So it's not going to go down. If it does go down, that's why you have the other one, but hopefully it doesn't go down.
Yeah.
It's not going to get hacked. A big thing in esports, because it's a very technologically literate group, is, DDoS attacks and things of that nature. You can really mess with an event. Since this never hits the public internet, you can't do that. That's not a challenge to anyone out there. I'm just saying able to do that.
Yeah, we don't enable any hackers out there.
Exactly. So, once you have that private internet, they can use that for their event. We can then put it on our network, which is, you can distribute to an ESPN or to one of our 800 US partners or partners around the world. So once on our network, you can put it in like a pool feed and people can just grab it. We do that for like the iPhone launch. So let's say Apple's launching an iPhone, and you want to grab it as CNBC, or you want to grab it as Bloomberg, or you want to grab it. I don't know why you do this for ESPN, but just for example, for ESPN, you can just grab it from our pool feed, which is great. We can then transmit that anywhere in the world. So if it needs to be linear, if it needs to be satellite, if we need to use bonded cellular, or if we just do OTT internet transmission, anywhere in the world, we can send that video signal. And we do all the encoding and decoding for that on our side, because like for the Super Bowl, right, they need it in a ton of different formats in various parts of the world. And we can convert all that in real time and send it out in whatever format they need. And then the last part, the services that we offer is production. So we can produce the entire event nuts to bolts. We can allow you to use our cloud-based production product or one of our remote control rooms. People traditionally bring in trucks, but the remote control rooms are replacing that. For example, the PGA is being produced out of our Burbank studio because a lot of people don't want to fly around the country right now. And people are worried about, not only your T&E budget, but just getting sick and wearing out your people. And so these guys are waking up, they're going to the control room in Burbank, they're cutting the show, and they're going back to their own beds. And that's going to be, I think, a very popular service moving forward, obviously due to the condition of the world, but also just from a convenience, from that standpoint. So we have studios and control rooms out there in Burbank. And for esports, we're obviously utilizing those. The cloud-based product has been super popular because you can produce and cut an entire show. It's like having a control room on your web browser. We just released that. So that's been very popular in the esports space.
Is that self-serve?
Yeah. So you basically would book a time slot, and it could be any time slot. We can have as many instances running at one time. But you'd say I want 3 hours or I want 5 hours over this weekend to produce, and you have logins and you can spin it up yourself, and then your whole team is on their computers wherever they're in the world, and you're cutting a show as if you're in the same room.
Wow. That's cool. Is that a commercial like is that, how attainable is that for, like, what kind of, not to name the pricing per se, but how are we talking about,
It's a much easier price point than like renting one of the remote controls physically.
Right.
So it is, I think, attainable for anyone wanting to do a legit production. I think the price point's crazy competitive.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of response to that. And again, with distancing becoming a thing, do you need your guy doing the replay edits in the room with you? Like, is that totally necessary? And the answer is no, it's not. This guy that's cutting the replays doesn't need to be, within this much space, the guy next to him in a control room.
Yeah.
As we try to thin out that control room, we've come up with really creative options. And this was in the works, for a year and a half. So way before COVID. And now this happened, and we're hopefully an option to keep people safe during a very difficult time. But less people in one space is sort of the name of the game right now. And we have creative and affordable ways to do that.
That's cool. So what's your day-to-day role as far as growing esports within Switch? We mentioned pre-episode, you travel a lot. Like, what's kind of the nuts and bolts of what you do now in trying to grow esports for the brand?
Yeah, so my job it's a business development role. It's to attain, so leagues out there have transmission options and have production options, and we're obviously the best one. So it's my job to just talk to people about the Switch and what makes us different. But because it was a new vertical, we launched it a year and a half ago. It was a lot of travel. So we were about 160 days last year. It was like 20 cities, 12 countries. It was a lot. It was awesome. It was fun. But it's a lot of time, dedicated to just getting out there, getting the brand out there and explaining why we're different. And, we've gotten great results. We signed ESL, Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, Blast Pro Series, and WePlay. So out of like the top 6 leagues, that's 5 of them. So it was a big year for us. And thankfully the market's taken to what the traditional sports world has had for the last 32 years in the Switch. and the results are speaking for themselves. People are very happy. And as esports grows and becomes, more sophisticated in its technical needs, we're happy to grow with it and be there to support it.
That's cool. What's your favorite game?
My favorite. So I was a Counter-Strike player, so that's still
Okay.
my favorite game to watch. I just think it's perfect. I think the most balanced game on the planet, and so still a huge game. It doesn't get as much airtime on like an ESPN because it's only about terrorists planting a bomb and then people defusing said bomb.
Yeah.
Tough sell sometimes.
Yeah.
A great story I have. It's a marketing story. You'll love this.
All right.
Back in the early days of esports, like 2009, it might have been early. It might have been 2006. This was early on. This was back when we were playing in like the back of LAN centers, and hotel ballrooms were the biggest thing on the planet, and you're playing $50,000 prize. Tylenol wanted to come into the space, and they sponsored this really sort of ragtag team of really good players that were very rough around the edges from Southern California. They were really good, but these guys were known as, I don't want to say like the bad boys of esports. That's a bad, sense, but they were sort of the outsiders, but they're really good. They never really had a corporate sponsorship because of just the way that they interacted. And Tylenol came in and said, "Hey, we want this. We want to get into esports and start this thing called Ouch Gaming." And so they sponsored these guys for, I believe it was $10,000 a month plus computers, which at the time was a lot.
Yeah,
it was a massive deal. So they came to the first event and they watched what Counter-Strike was, and it was literally about guys shooting each other in the head, planting bombs, using bombs. This was not so long after 9/11, right?
Right.
They immediately said, "Take our name off the team. Keep the cash. Don't worry about the computers. Rebrand the team back to whatever you want, but we're out."
Somebody had signed the deal and didn't realize what it was.
Right. And they came to this event and they were like, "What the hell is this?" And like, bomb defuse. Like, can you say bomb defuse? It was an interesting thing to watch.
I wonder if that marketing guy lasted much longer. Tylenol.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess $120,000 for them is not really anything.
Drop in the bucket. Yeah.
But just the way that went down was funny. So again, the other complete opposite example would be BMW coming in and really thoughtfully taking a year and a half to put together a deal with the right teams and the right games. So some sponsors come in and they don't just blanket sponsor every team. Like they'll be like, "All right, we only want your non-shooting games," or "We only want this." So, violence and shooting and that stuff is a no-no for some of these brands.
Exactly. Where's it all going? I mean, what's the I don't want to say end point, but like, where's you've got, speaking of someone, the popularity of the Counter-Strikes and the shoot 'em up games is, we'll simplify it. I'm sure some gamer would not appreciate that oversimplification of, third player, first player, all that stuff. But where is all this headed? Is it just about to explode even further with the broadcasting and those kind of things? We're going to have 7 stations that are broadcasting games on DirecTV. Like, where's all this headed?
I mean, look, you're talking to a real believer here, and I've been able to have a pretty incredible life because of esports, and it's a rocket ship right now. The numbers don't lie. The viewership numbers are insane. They're a lot bigger than a lot of traditional sports. Kids are growing up, like your kids, for example, playing these games. Less kids are playing football, for example, just throwing that out there because parents don't want their kids to play football. They're consuming content much differently. It's not like, even when I was a kid coming home and you had sports starting at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., the 24/7 access to all this stuff. There's a tournament going on every night in multiple time zones around the world. So if you want to watch something at noon, you can watch something at noon. You're interacting in a much different way. You're not sitting in front of a TV. You're actually involved in the experience. It's chat options and second screen options. So I think the market is speaking really loudly as to what they like. And I tell people all the time, you don't have to get it. Like it's not a debate to me whether esports is popular or not. Right. There's numbers. You can say, "I don't understand it," and that's totally fine. There's a ton of live sports that I'm watching. I got in not a debate, but a huge conversation with my buddy yesterday about cricket. He thinks it's the interesting thing in the world. I don't get it. But I don't have to get it.
Yep.
He's from India. It's huge in India, and I don't need to get it to understand that it's got massive value where you're from. And esports is the same way. You don't need to get it. The numbers are there. It'd be a missed opportunity if every company is not looking at an esports strategy right now, and thoughtfully looking at one at that. Again, we've seen companies enter the space the wrong way so many times and get burned for it. You could do more damage to your brand than good if you're lazy about this.
Yeah.
The numbers are going to continue to go up. Whether linear TV is the option or the go-to, I don't know. It doesn't need to be. This fan base didn't grow up watching linear TV. Most of them don't have cable.
Yep.
The majority of them don't have cable. They get their TV through YouTube TV or Hulu or whatever. So everyone's like, well, how many channels are we going to have? Is there going to be a dedicated ESPN? Well, yeah, I mean, there is. And there's a couple companies trying to do that right now, Ben being one of them. But there doesn't need to be. I don't need to turn on channel 37 and see esports because I have my computer anywhere in the world with an internet connection. It's frankly easier.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Charles, man, really fascinating. I mean, I really appreciate your insights, your background. It makes me want to play like a game or something while we're talking. I did this. We talked to another guy like wanting to. I threw out the old Contra cheat code. If you remember it,
it's like up, down, down. Man,
left, right, BA start.
Right.
Yeah. It brings back the memories, but now it's just so darn complex. Like my brain goes a little sideways unless I'm playing like Rocket League or Madden, But
and man, there's still people ask me like what I play all the time, and if I'm gonna sit down and play a game, I like the single player story games because you can zone out and chill for a little bit.
Yeah, like Legend of Zelda.
Exactly. It's a good time. You just chill for a couple hours and you play a game and you zone out for a little bit because multiplayer games can get really intense. And as a guy that played, it's hard for me to I don't want to use a Jordan example, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Jordan doesn't play a pickup game and play a casual pickup game. That's not how Jordan operates. And so I was a really, really, really bad esports version of Jordan. Never had any success as a player, but I'm going to go ahead and say I can't, the Jordan scenario in the pickup game.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your bad is a lot of people's good with the company you're keeping. So, Charles, man, really appreciate the time. I know our listeners will enjoy it. And I hope you stay safe there in New York. And if you travel through the Greenville area, let's stay in touch and we'll grab a beer or something.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Really appreciate it.
Great. Hey, guys, it's Ryan Alford. Really appreciate everyone listening to this episode of the Radcast. Follow along at the.rad.cast on Instagram or at radical.results. And we'll see you next time.